to New Hampshire Unscripted with your host, Ray Dudley.
Hi, Ray.
How are you, man?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Yeah.
I'm glad we could finally schedule this.
Yeah. Me too. I don't think we've ever actually met, have we? Have we crossed paths?
We have. I honestly don't even believe we've crossed paths. I'm kind of new to the scene, I guess you could say. So I don't know a lot of people.
Well, welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. Yeah, but Wayland was raving about being able to meet with you and chat with you. And once I heard that you were looking to talk to some of us, I was excited for the opportunity.
Good. So when you say that you are fairly new to this, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, so I didn't start acting until I was 27, almost 28.
Oh, that looks like it would be last year for you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I had always wanted to, I think. It was always kind of in the back of my head, but never really got into it until not too long ago. So I'm 31 now, so that was like 3 or 4 years ago, about when I started doing it. And so done a handful of shows, not too many, and I kind of fell in love with it pretty quick. The community here, and yeah, so it's been really good.
Let's peel that part of the onion for a minute. All right, so are you local? Where are you local to?
Yeah, so I live in Merrimack, New Hampshire right now.
Okay. And has most of your experience been down there?
Kinda, a little bit. So I started, so the very first show I did was A Few Good Men in Milford, with Milford Community, or Milford area players rather. Yeah, I heard about an audition, went there. And so I did that show. And then from there, some of the people that I met, the director, just contacts, heard about other shows and started, just auditioning for ones that I had the time for or wanted to. So I did another show up in Concord. I think it was my second show, which was Shakespeare in Hollywood. And then after that, kind of bounced around. I did some shows in Pelham, some shows with Nashua Theater Guild, those guys. So, yeah.
How did Wayland find you for this project?
That's a really good question. So I got cast in the Concord production of Barefoot in the Park. So I don't know if you heard that that's going up here shortly. I was going to play Paul in it, who's one of the leads, and really excited about it. Was really looking forward to it. And then COVID happened. So it shut down the production and everything. But during that time, before, we had like a handful of rehearsals. So Wayland was doing like voice work with us. So he came in, would meet with us, and just basically, was helping us with our diction, our projection, so on and so forth. So from there, he honestly didn't really see me in too much. I think he maybe saw a rehearsal. He says he saw me in Shakespeare in Hollywood, but yeah, I don't know. He definitely rolled the dice with me, which I was very thankful for for letting me come on. And he said that multiple times that he wasn't sure what I was going to do, but he had a feeling that it would work. So I'm very thankful for that.
So this is a big bite of an apple.
Big bite. Yeah.
When he approached you, and he, of course, can't give you much information, what was your first reaction when he said, I'd like to ask if you would do this play that I can't tell you anything about. There'll be no rehearsals. I can't direct you, and I'll give you the script the night you walk on stage.
I think the first feeling, I know you're talking to Wayland. I know you've done a lot of acting and you've been in the scene for quite a while. And I know that you probably know that familiar feeling when somebody walks up to you and is like, hey, I'd like you to be a part of this. It's a good feeling. It feels good to be chosen.
Yeah.
So that kind of whitewashed all the other things. And I was just like, yeah, I'd like to be a part of something potentially, but it was in the future and didn't really think too much of it. So when that time came for it to actually happen and I started learning more of the details, like You're not getting the script until you get on stage. You're not going to know anything about the show, so on and so forth. Yeah, there was a significant amount of trepidation going into the following weeks, or the weeks following up to it. How
nervous were you? Like the weeks leading up, you had to have been, because you don't have anything to grab onto. There's nothing here. This is about as blind as you're going to be.
Exactly.
This is almost like the nightmare we all have, where you're on stage without a screen.
Right. Yeah.
Except you're living
it's so true. Yeah. It was over the years, and as I've gotten older, I've started to recognize myself and like what gets me worked up. And I knew that this was going to be it. It was going to happen for everybody. Anybody who was going to be a part of this was going to have a moment where they were going to feel like, this is terrifying. So I tried to keep a couple things in my mind. And one of the main ones was I don't owe anybody necessarily anything, in the sense that like I haven't seen the show before. I've never done it before. And like, I'm hoping, and I know that, Waylon and Lacey going up to it were like telling people, that, this is what part of the performance. So as it approached, that was one of the things that got in my head, was like, I don't know what's going to happen. I have no idea. So I could go, sure, it could be horrible, but at the same time, like, if it is, who could blame me? It's like, I'm walking on stage completely blind, who knows? Yeah.
You think the audience was showing up because they wanted to see a possible train wreck?
That's what I told all my friends. I said, you're either going to show up and it's going to be like, a really great experience, or you get to laugh at me for however long it goes on for.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my selling point.
How do you even prepare? Is there anything that you can do to prepare? I mean, you know nothing about what you're about to do. So how can you even mentally, except for the fact you just have to do what you said, where you just kind of, everyone's going to be doing it,
Yeah.
Is there any way you can mentally really put yourself in some kind of a situation where you think you can master it? Or do you just really have, for a long time, I've said that theater in general is the same man's bungee jump, because once you make the leap and the lights go up and you walk on stage, it doesn't stop till you hit the bottom.
That's right.
This is just that, like, exponentially.
Yeah, you're totally right. Yes. Yeah. So I kind of love that stuff. I'm an anxious person as it is. And
we call that a drug addiction right there, brother.
It is. It definitely is.
Yeah, that adrenaline. Yeah.
But it's one of those things where it's like, like you kind of pull that trigger and say, all right, I'm going to do this. And then you step out on stage, and, I think everybody has that similar sensation where they just like, it just kind of like everything melts and it just kind of happens.
Yeah.
But that being said, for most shows, you have you have the rehearsals and the knowledge of the script and everything else to back you going into it. So there's like a little bit of comfort. But in this instance, like, you have no idea what's about to happen. And it's this extreme sense of trepidation. So I guess to answer your question, what did I do to prep? I really tried hard to stay as calm as I possibly could, like going up to it. So I did I spent the day doing things that I enjoyed, and I tried to pretend like I wasn't going to do anything that night, and that it was just going to be, I tried to like lie to myself, I tried to method act my way out of.
Yeah. Good. How'd that work out?
Fear. It was there, but I listened to a lot of, I do a lot of, before shows, I like to listen to music to get me into a certain mood, depending on like what I'm trying to do. So I listened to a lot of piano music to calm me down going into it. A lot of artists that I like to listen to. And then I did a lot of stretching backstage, and I just, I don't know. I probably paced a rut in the floor beforehand, but I was just trying to keep myself as calm as I possibly could. And in my head going into it, I was telling myself what I already told you, which was, people are expecting nothing. They're expecting just for you to go out there and to do whatever happens. And so my thought process was, I need to be as open as I possibly can to whatever happens, because like everybody, like every actor out there, I have strengths and I have weaknesses. And I try to build off those weaknesses as much as I can, but I find the best way to be able to deal with them, especially in a scenario where you just have to like improv a bit, is to stay calm, and to try and keep your mind empty as much as you can so that you can let something happen. And especially with something like this, as you're reading it, you're going to discover things as you're reading it, and those emotions and what you're feeling, at least in my ideologies, I felt like that would be the best way to represent the script rather than coming through and saying, I'm going to attack it from this angle. So
let me just encapsulate real quickly for anybody who doesn't know what we're talking about. It's a play called White Rabbit, Red Rabbit, where the actor never sees the script until they are handed it to them when they're walking on stage. Is that correct? You've never seen the set. You get no direction.
Never see the set. You get no direction. You're basically, you go in as blind as you can. If you do the show, you can't do it again. If you see the show, you can't talk about it. And it's one of those. Yeah, it's very, very secretive. It's a very well kept secret, to be honest. It's kind of surprising. It's difficult. You'll find a hard time. I didn't do any Google searching, but talking to Wayland and Lacey, and then after the show, I did. It's difficult to find anything on the show. Apparently, Wayland was mentioning that I think one critic had revealed like the show on one of his reviews of it, which was super unfortunate. But you have to dig to find it. So
yeah, I tried looking because I know that I was going to be doing these podcasts, and I was hoping to get some kind of a hint. But I mean, it's vaporized. There's nothing there for the most part. So there were 9 performances. Which one were you?
8.
You were 8.
So
I was 8. Sandwiched in between Aaron and Katie.
Yep. Saturday night.
Did you see Katie's? Did you go back to watch Katie's the next day?
I didn't, unfortunately. I was stuck with some family stuff. I really wanted to go watch her performance though, and I was bummed to find out that she was on at 2 because I thought she was going on at 7 for some reason. So unfortunately, I missed her performance, but I heard she did amazing, and I was really bummed that I missed it. But yeah, I'm going to be looking for this show going forward wherever I'm at, because I'd love to see as many performances as I can, because this is one of those things where it's not tainted by people's like interpretations of what other people do of a show. Because oftentimes you'll find, people who will do, for example, like Barefoot in the Park or A Few Good Men. These are really famous shows.
Right.
And it's really easy to do a quick Google search and see another interpretation, and that's going to muddy what you do.
Yeah.
So I find it really fascinating and just exciting to see like how different each performance could potentially be. And I talked to a lot of the actors afterwards, like Eric Skoglund.
Yep.
Him and I actually worked together. So we were speaking about, our different experiences. It was interesting to see the similarities and some of the parts that we both had difficulties with, and how he interpreted one aspect of the play versus how I interpreted one aspect of the play. Yeah, it's very interesting to see how it hits different people.
So let's talk about that night.
Mm-hmm.
You show up, I'm guessing a little early. I don't know what that is for you personally, but you're backstage. You have no idea how many people are going to be out there. You have no idea what the set looks like. You can't get any information from anybody. What are those like last 5 minutes before you go on like for you?
Yeah, I'd say that's when the nerves really started to ramp up a bit, because I could hear people outside. The Hat Box has a theater that it's backstage. Dressing area is pretty open, and you can hear people you can hear the house really easily. So that was affecting me slightly, but I still fought it. Really fought it with some of these little tiny tricks that I was pulling on myself. And then come I'd say 2 minutes till I went on. Waylon brings me out, and we're sitting in the wings. I'm standing in the wings, and I can hear them going over the announcements and just talking about what's going on with the theater. And so that right there, now I no longer have my music. My earbuds are out. I'm standing there. I have to be, present and ready. So yeah, I was definitely, the nerves were starting to spike then for sure.
Yeah.
And I remember grabbing Waylon's shoulder. I didn't even say anything. I just grabbed his shoulder and just kind of sat there, just kind of ground myself. And yeah, that was a nice moment because he kind of helped me kind of come back into myself, and then I went on.
It's amazing. He has to have such confidence in the people he had chosen. Yeah, because what's about to happen, what the audience doesn't know is what's about to happen is that an actor is about to show how he does his craft in real time in 70 minutes. He's going to deconstruct and reconstruct himself right there in front of all of these people. Even never having seen the set, he has no idea what's on there. I mean, you could be walking out and there could be an alligator in the middle of the set. You have no idea.
Right.
So he had that says a lot for you, because he had to have tremendous confidence in what he thought you could pull off.
Yeah, Waylon and I have had, since that experience and, leading up to it, we've built a very, very close bond. He's a very special person. And I keep on he's not the kind of person though. It's funny. Waylon's not the kind of person to really like dig into I don't know how to put it. I keep on searching for the reason why he chose me. Because I think, like most actors, I have self-conscious issues. I want to be validated. I want to get that external validation. And, he just keeps on going back to, he had a feeling that it would work. So it felt amazing to know that. And it felt really good to have that support in a way, and that trust, to know that he was trusting me. It scared me too, because that put more pressure in a way on me, knowing that he's kind of putting a lot on the line to have me out there. We're not talking like some huge Broadway production, but at the same time, we care about this work. We care about this stuff a lot. It takes, we can call it a hobby, call it whatever you want to, but it's important to us. Yeah. And it's an important thing to be a part of, and for a multitude of different reasons that we don't have to necessarily go into right now. But I wanted to do the script justice. I wanted to do him justice. I wanted to make sure that all the audience was going to be able to get out of the script whatever Nassim wanted them to have out of the script. Now, I had no idea if he even wanted them to retain anything. It was one of those things where it's like going into an experience like this, there's so many different emotions that are running through, and that being one of them, this responsibility aspect. And I think that you have to, like, in a way, let that go to get to that place that you were talking about, where you see as a reading what he's trying to do, and you move in that direction, and you just kind of go. I think that's the biggest thing with it. It's, and I'm sure everybody else, Waylon has said, there's different, adjectives he's given all of us for our performances. And we all interpreted it in a different way. And I think that's one of the beautiful things of the script, of acting in general in a lot of ways. I find this instance to be like, it's almost like if you were to go out there and be like, what is he trying to do? What is he trying to do? Like, honestly, like I do with most shows, you get a script and you are cast as a character, or you want to play a character. And I don't know about yourself, but I spend like, a significant amount of time trying to figure out, like, obviously who the character is, what it is I'm trying to do with that character, who he or she is, they are in the midst of that show, what their reasonings are for certain actions. And like and that's one of the things I love about acting, is spending time dissecting and reading into material. With this show, you can't do that. Like, you have to go in so empty and so open that you're completely available for whatever's going to happen. And looking back on it and thinking about the material, like I'm sure there's multiple different ways that I could have interpreted it. But what came out is what came out. There's a lot of beauty in that. There's a lot of frustration in that. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like this. My brother said it really, really good. My family came to see the show, and my brother, who's not a very big, theater film person, I always try and get him involved in those things and interested, but he's an engineer. He's very analytical. He doesn't think like that, but he's a human and he has a lot of emotion. And one of the things he said that was interesting about the show is that knowing that I was up there and I was reading it and knowing that I'd never seen the show before brought him, and I heard this from multiple people as well, brought the viewer into the show like so much closer. Because oftentimes when you're watching shows, especially theater, like you're in a theater, you're seeing people walk in, that realism, it's a lot harder to get yourself immersed into that experience and what's happening on stage, because you're being duped in a way. That what's happening is rehearsed. What's happening has been done many times before this, and this is a version of what they're bringing forward. And I think really good theater, I mean, obviously it changes periodically. For myself, what I really enjoy is realism and naturalism. And I think at a show like this, it's really hard to not be drawn in, because you're experiencing it at the exact same time. Yeah. The actor and the audience is at the exact same time they're being pulled in. So it's definitely a unique show.
And it's raw, right? I mean, because as you mentioned earlier, there's nothing to rehearse. So what you are experiencing in that moment is as real as it can be. I mean, because you can't act, you can try to interpret a bit, but everything that you are as a person, you have to draw on willfully or maybe not willfully. I don't know the play. So that your economic, spiritual, psychological, sociological background is all sitting there waiting to be tugged on or brought in dribs and drabs, if necessary, to create something. This is why I really find it to be fantastic. And from an audience viewpoint, they really are watching a craft taking place as this actor formulates something. I don't know. I can't put a name on it because I haven't seen it. So I don't know what to say about it, but I think it's remarkable. I think it's remarkable. I just talked with Katie Collins the other day, and I'll say the same thing I said to her. I'll say to you, my hat's off to you, because
thank you.
Well, I can imagine what it was like. I mean, I've done a one-man show, but I memorized the lines. And in fact, it was done at the Hatbox too, which is really kind of nice because it has that intimate feeling. The audience is right there. You can stumble over them. You'd stare them right in the eyes,
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I cannot imagine what that pressure felt like to be handed a script as you're heading towards that stage. You now have it. You don't know what's in that envelope or whatever you're holding. I don't know. You take a deep breath. What do you do right there? You hit the stage. You've seen it. This is the first time you've seen it. Do you give yourself a moment to look around? What happens at that point?
Yeah.
I mean, if you can't say, I get it, but
no. That's something that I thought a lot about too. So I guess I'll preface this with kind of like speaking towards one of the things that you were saying, like the fact that you had done a one-man show and that you had rehearsed it. One of the things I try and stop myself from doing when I'm doing shows, but I constantly do it, and I know other actors do it as well, is this like rereading and re-rehearsal that happens. You have the rehearsal that happens, with the rest of the cast, but there's almost like this constant rehearsal that happens inside of my brain where if I'm doing a show, I'm thinking about, like I was saying, like the character and it's, their relationship to everybody else within the play. But I'm also thinking about each line in a lot of ways and how that might be interpreted in a certain way or a different way.
Yes.
So leading up to a show, that in itself can cause a lot of anxiety for me, thinking like, oh, that this section of the show is might be a difficult part for you, might be a difficult section, might be something that's like hard to be able to slide into or be whatever it might be. It's just something that you're ruminating on that's causing you duress. I think that, however, with this show, that is gone, and you don't have the ability to really think about it, and you have to be completely open. I'm a procrastinator by nature. I like really, really badly.
This is like the pinnacle there. This is the utmost.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So it caters to my innate nature. But I'll say it's interesting because so going on stage, I remember walking on, and in my head beforehand, I remember thinking like, I have this thing that I tend to speak faster than I mean to. It's New England. I think it's just like my nature. So I've tried to remove that as much as I can within my speech and think a little bit more, to just think slower. And I think in this instance, what I wanted to do and what I tried to do is, when you get that script, just speak as slowly as you can for the first like few lines. And that's just what I kept on telling myself. And I think that in and of itself kind of forced me to calm down and sit with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because with a show like this, you can't really kind of run in and like go like all gangbusters, just like right out the gate, just start like reading super fast, because unless you know what's happening in the show beforehand, you're going to gloss over things that you shouldn't gloss over. You're going to, you might miss a section, whatever it might be. So by forcing myself to read slow, to talk slower, it helped me with the show in and of itself, because it helped me to navigate how I was feeling in a way, and to almost channel that through the experience. So it forced me to pay attention to each line, and then you just start getting a rhythm. It's kind of like, the speed bags that boxers use. You start off kind of slow, and then as you get that rhythm going, you can speed up and go a lot faster. And I think that's when the show started getting more interesting for me, was when I started feeling more comfortable and I understood his writing style. It's like reading a good book, might start slowly at first.
Out loud in front of people.
Out loud.
Try to act it out.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I'll say, what were you going to say?
I'm saying it's a little bit more than just reading a book. So
yeah, no, it's true. I will say, I think one of the things that helps too is Waylon and Lacey did an amazing job with preparing us for the show. So they did a great job of, telling us what day of was going to look like, where we needed to go. They gave us a lot of really good tips too. And I remember, I forget who it was that said this. I'll have to look back at the email chain with the cast, but somebody said, was talking about how it was a really great experience. And they said, trust Nassim, trust him. And that's kind of like, that freed me up a bit too, because you got to also think like, he wrote this show knowing that the actors were not going to see the play beforehand. So hopefully, especially if it gets to the point where, it's gone on Broadway and now it's making the community theater circuits, hopefully he understands the plight of an actor and what needs to happen. And so the script, I was hoping was going to be written in a way that was digestible at the moment, and not something that was going to be, difficult for me to process as I was going through. Granted, I'm not saying the subject matter itself, afterwards we're definitely thinking about what happened with the show. And I think that's definitely the moniker of a good show in and of itself, but trusting him was a big thing as well. And reading that email helped me out a lot.
How would you describe yourself as an actor? Are you someone who, for instance, uses the whole stage, or do you tend to, like, especially in that moment, stand your ground right there, center stage, or do you find the freedom, to move around? Was there that liberty for yourself to really kind of own the whole set?
Yeah, it depends. I have a reputation for not being not being blockable, if that's a word. it's difficult for me to stay in one spot.
A little freelance, huh?
I guess. But at the same time, I found myself staying in one spot a lot, oddly enough. I found myself really processing some of this material that I was going through and not moving around as much as I normally would have. I think from an acting standpoint, from my, albeit layman's perspective, I find myself far more drawn to whatever I'm feeling in the moment. You know, in a lot of shows, it's completely indicative of what the character is going to do or what the scene's like. So, yeah, I mean, it's just whatever kind of happens or comes out. And I think through that process, it's a lot easier for me because I'm notoriously unblockable. It was probably maybe easier for me to have that, I guess, sense of improv when it came to movement. But yeah, no, I found myself standing still or not moving a lot, I'll say. Not moving as much as I thought I would.
Did you find at all that you got pulled into the script where you kind of forgot for a moment or two that there was an audience that you needed to kind of bring in, or, you know, you just find yourself captivated by the mechanisms of the script itself? Did that happen at all to you while you were performing?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. There was definitely one specific moment I obviously can't go into, but one specific moment that like really struck me. And that's one of the things I've always tried to do through, like, you know, for a degree of stage fright, you know, that I've dealt with periodically. I try and pretend like nobody is there, even though, you know, you're paying attention to, you know, how you're, obviously what your angles are. And, you know,
Right.
You don't want to be having your back to the audience, which is something that I did multiple times for my first show. I should say during the rehearsals. I got that beaten out of me pretty quick by the stage manager. But yeah, no, I think in this instance, you know, I was so cognizant of the audience, and it really does play to the audience. The play itself really does play to them. And so, yeah, the majority of the time I was aware of them, but yeah, there definitely was an instance or two where I went within myself and was really kind of overcome with emotion in a lot of ways. And it was hard for me to, I wouldn't say it was necessarily hard for me to move forward from there, but it was definitely like unexpected, which I think is great.
Yeah. In those moments, were you able to take a breath? Were you able to stop and like kind of regain yourself? Or did you feel like, no, I have to press on here. I can't even take a minute to let this sink in or whatever? Yeah,
I kind of let it flavor the rest of the show. And honestly, I think that's what he intends in a way, is the material. You don't know what's coming.
Right.
You have no idea what's coming. So good, bad, you know, happy, sad, confusing, infuriating, whatever it might be. It just happens. So I do remember taking a beat, but yeah, it was almost like I allowed that emotion to carry me through and kind of pepper what I did the rest of the time, which was definitely, it was definitely interesting. And talking to people in the audience afterwards, you know, it was apparent to them, which is good. I want that, you know, I think that's the best thing you can possibly do. And
at least, you know, they're engaged, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Didn't put them to sleep or have them walk out.
Thank goodness. Right.
Did you find the time passed quickly, or were you like halfway through it and thinking, "Holy crap, I got another"? So
fast.
Yeah.
So fast. Oh my gosh. It was ridiculous. Yeah. It was like a blink of an eye, which is wild because normally those experiences you think would be like a long time.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I know how it could feel like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Which, you know, had it gone, you know, poorly, probably would have been the case. But luckily I was able to find a rhythm with the script, and it started to kind of flow from there. But yeah, it went really fast, which is remarkable.
So you finish, you get to the final page, you're done. What happens at that point for you? Are you exhausted? Are you grateful? Are you
I hesitate to give away my emotions because I don't want to.
Okay, that's fair.
To you know, ruin it for yourself or anybody else who might listen to this, but I will say I was definitely was very grateful for the experience. Very grateful for the experience, extremely. And I was full of emotion. I'll say that much. It was a very emotional experience, and it is hard to. I mean, I could put into words if we were actually talking about the subject of the show.
Yeah.
Which is so funny because it's, I would love to discuss that, but it's one of those things where it's like, the experience in and of itself, I'm very grateful for it, extremely grateful for it, and extremely grateful for Waylon and Lacey and the rest of the cast. And it just felt very, it felt like it needed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of those things where it's like, once it's over, you just feel so grateful. There's a lot of, I mean, obviously there's the, 15, 20 minutes after the show, you're like, wow, I don't have to be like nervous for that to happen anymore.
Yeah.
It's done. It's kind of like that bungee jump you were saying. You did it. It's over with. You made the leap. It's out of here.
Yeah. You're decompressing at that point. What did it do for you? What did you get out of it ultimately? Confidence or just some growth? I mean, you've done something not a lot of people do. You have conquered something that not a lot of people get the chance to do. What do you think it gave you ultimately?
That night I was, full of confidence. It just made me feel because this is a very cathartic experience in a lot of ways. And I think that from that space, and then also knowing that, I had gone through the process already, it felt good. But afterwards, the material in and of itself really gave me some perspective that I needed in a lot of ways. It gave me a better sense of family and dynamic. My parents and my brother were in the show, and it's hard to put into words without obviously revealing something. But
were you stretched by it? Actor wise, did it force you to incorporate maybe or create something that hadn't been before? Did you find yourself doing something new, odd, different?
Yeah, it did in a way. Absolutely. There was parts of the show that were, that stretched, an ability level within myself that was, that I needed to, that might have been difficult for me to express maybe at the moment or at the time. Yeah, I don't know. It being as open as I could going into it, I think helped me a lot. Leading into that experience and knowing that nobody else knew what the show was about. I didn't know what the show was about. Almost more importantly, they knew that I didn't know what the show was about. All of that kind of gave me the freedom to kind of be as open as I possibly could and kind of walk into the experience and just be whatever I was supposed to be. Be happy, sad, confused, angry, play a character, whatever I was asked to do within the moment.
So you were that open. There was no areas where you're like, I hope I don't ever have to go here, or I hope I don't ever have to feel this. Or did you even come across parts where you're like, as you can kind of read a line or two ahead as you're, the whatever scope you can get, where you're like, oh, I don't know if I really want to address that, feel that, speak that, anything. I mean, you have to get into specifics. I know you cannot, but
yeah, no, yes. The answer would be yes. They're definitely. I think that's part of the show, though. In a way, I think it touches on so many different characteristics and capabilities of an actor, and so many different emotions that it would be impossible, like physically impossible, for somebody to walk out there, because everybody has their operating capabilities, like how they walk through the world on a daily basis. When you're creating and doing a show like that, we say like improv, as in my eyes, we say it as like improv as like, oh, it's kind of making things up as you go, and it's very playful. But in this instance, it takes improv and like moves it to a completely different level, in the sense that like, there are aspects of the show that, you have no idea that are going to happen. And it could just like grab you and pull you into another direction, or have you do something that you weren't expecting to have to do, and Waylon would be the first to say every single one of us actors made, and I hesitate to even say this word, but every single one of us actors made a mistake. we all did something that like was, maybe misread something or misinterpreted something. I know one of the actors had to go back and reread, one of the lines, just be like, I have to check that again, like in front of the audience to see. So yeah, it's not polished, and it's very far from polished. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about it is that when you make a mistake on stage, that's real life. When we're having a conversation like we are right now, periodically we'll talk over each other. One of us will talk too much. It's like it becomes this thing where it's like that's reality and that's realism. And because of that, I think it brings the viewer into the play that much quicker, because they're like, oh, this is real. This is happening right now. Like they have no idea what's about to happen.
Yeah.
And you and I have no idea what's about to happen. And so it's like this, it definitely creates this, I don't want to say tension, but anticipation that happens. Like it's palpable in that room. Like people are sitting there like, what is going to happen next?
Well, it just seems like it could be so laced with landmines. I mean, so many.
Yeah, he could be a horrible person and just like have us just like, all right, I'll strip down naked. In front of everybody. Anything could happen. So it's just.
Is it something that you, if you could, I know you can't, but would you do it again? That kind of a thing? Or is it a one and done? It's out of your system. You're good. I
think I could, and I think I would. This is like a trait or an aspect of acting that like a muscle that I've never worked before. Something that other than I can't even say other than in a show when I've misread a line or like said something wrong within the middle of the show. Because even then, like I know what the show's about and I know how to bring it back if it's egregious. But I think I would do something like this again. I just, I personally really enjoy the process of getting a script, reading the script, dissecting the character and trying to become them as best I can. I really enjoy it. I think that if this was the way that acting, like if this is just how it was done, clearly there'd be much less actors. I'd probably be one of the less ones. Yeah, I'd probably do it again. But it's one of those things where it is a very taxing experience and it is very emotional.
Do you think that this plays to any certain skill set more than another? I mean, I know Aaron does improv for a living with QCI. Does that ability, you think, help or hinder? Are there people who should not, you think, ought not to tackle this until maybe a certain point in their life, or maybe there's just some people who shouldn't do this now that you've done it?
I think if you're an actor, and I think if you're an actor, you should do it. I think if you're an actor, it's pretty much like, I guess I'll just leave it at that, because the show needs to have a different interpretation. And I think that human element is what makes it so beautiful. I mean, it's not like, for example, I often talk to people about, the whole casting element within acting, and like for myself to try and remind myself that it's not me. It's just like maybe the character in and of themselves, that I'm not getting cast as that role, because certain roles are better played by certain people. Certain people are going to be able to, you're not going to see like Helen Mirren play Daniel Day-Lewis's character and There Will Be Blood. She probably would have done a phenomenal job, but it wouldn't have been what it was. And it would have been very different. So I think though with this show, I think it's should be done by as many different people as can do it, because that human element, your emotions, who you are, your experiences prior to that, all of these things I think we try and bring out when we act. We try and elicit some sort of experience that we've had before, maybe, and play that. But I think in this instance, it's like you can't run away from that. It's different. I think in most other instances, you're trying to chase that feeling and try and build it up and feed it to the audience every night. But in this instance, it just happens. It happens for you.
I think it would be pretty interesting to talk to an audience member who has seen it multiple times.
Yeah.
To find out not if somebody has done it right or wrong, but for that reason, because of the individual interpretations of certain sentences, words, feelings.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because it has to affect the audience member, because they, as the actor, maybe has a different take on something. That audience member who has seen it 2 or 3 other times is like, oh, and they take something away differently as well at that point. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, they 100% do. There's actually somebody, just talked to Waylon about this. I know there was a woman who saw, I think, 4 performances. I can't remember what her name was. You should reach out to Waylon on that. He might be able to get you in contact with this individual. Because I agree. I think that would be an interesting take. Everybody that saw my performance was also talking about how interested they would be to go see somebody else as well perform it, just to see how they differ from what I did. Yeah, I would love to see multiple shows and see what happens. If nothing else, just because of the excitement of that's like live theater on steroids. It's like, the reason why I imagine people watching NASCAR, because they're waiting for something bad to happen.
Yeah. And the experience is kind of heightened in the Hatbox too, because of that, the intimacy of the audience, the intimacy of the theater. I mean, you couldn't really do it. I guess you could maybe in a proscenium theater, but it plays so much better at places like the Players Ring and the Hatbox,
Oh yeah, it does, and it's made for. I mean, that's a very astute observation, because it's made for that environment. You could play it in a bigger theater. You 100% could, but it would be different. Yeah. And I think it would be different on like every level. I think it would be worse. I think it would be a lot better to have it, because you are. I don't think that this isn't giving away anything. It's saying that like you're essentially having a conversation with the audience. Nassim is having a conversation with the audience. In order to do that effectively, I think kind of removing that barrier that you normally have between you and the audience, whether it be height, or depth, or whatever it might be, removing that as much as you can will only benefit the show.
Did you talk to any audience members after yours? What was their reaction?
I did.
Basically?
Yeah. I feel like giving their overall sentiments away would almost give away some of the show.
I get it.
But I'm trying to, I'm just trying, because I'm so worried I'm going to say something.
I know.
Everyone's going to listen to this. I'm going to get a phone call. He goes, "What the heck?" No, I'm trying to think what I can, because I know that there's stuff I can tell to you.
Were they moved? Were they riveted? Yeah. Were they? I don't know. Were they thankful, grateful? Were they all of it?
Yeah, I'd say it was. They were kind of like for example, my brother's. I keep on going back to him because it just keeps on. He really struck me after the show, because like I said, he's kind of more of an analytical thinker, and he definitely has an emotional side to him, but he doesn't really come out that often. He was very affected by the show, which I had never seen really of him before. And he kept on wanting to talk to me about it. And I had other individuals that I spoke with afterwards who were kind of just blown away by the experience as a whole, and it being so present. It's like this. I'm trying to think of a good way. I imagine it's almost like someone who's done an ADD medication like Adderall or Ritalin, where it focuses them really intently on what they're paying attention to, because everybody, and I could see it in their faces as I'm performing this show, they're very honed in on the experience, very honed in on the experience. And I'd say I'd like to say that it's in part to how I interpreted the show. I'll leave that up to them, but I think that from my standpoint, it's very much so up to their up to the material. It was due to the material, how Nassim splayed it out, his rhythm, his breaks, his ability to just. And I'm sure you can level with this too. A good writer, a good screenplay, is I love that. Like I
Yeah.
remember when I got A Few Good Men, reading Aaron Sorkin's that play. There's so many nuggets and so many things to dissect, and it's just there's so many different ways to play it. And I think that's very similar. I mean, very different subject matter and very different, writing style, but it's the same in the sense that like it's definitely like enjoyable in a sense. It's one of those. It's like that. When you're reading like a good monologue and you get this like feeling where it's just like you can kind of dig into this and
Yeah.
it just feels really good. Whether it's like happy, funny, sad, whatever it might be, it's that.
Yeah.
That's a good way to describe it. At least how my experience through it was a lot of that writing as I was going through. I started getting that rhythm. I'm like, all right, I got this. I feel like I have what he's trying to portray in a way. And I went with that like emotion and that direction. And I just kind of went from there. And yeah, so I think that like, I don't even know what your question was at this point. I'm just
That's
rambling.
okay. That's okay. Let me say something about this. So this is what makes this really unique is that the actor is in full control here. The audience is there, wants to be taken on a trip. In a normal play setting where you're not breaking that fourth wall, you're pretending there's no audience. The audience is pretending that you don't see them. And there's that dynamic there. But here, you have the ability to literally take this audience willingly on a trip with you as you create. And they get to, not even vicariously, they are experiencing things as you're experiencing those things. Raw is not the right word, but I think the dynamic there is different because that wall's down now. And you're able to have some type of a whole different connection than in a normal play. The audience it's almost a voyeur type of thing where they're kind of peeking in, and seeing what's going on that stage. Here, they know what's happening. They know. Then that changes everything that's going on. So by the time those 70 minutes are up, there's been this incredible group hug experience that has just taken place. So
absolutely. And, that's definitely a testament to the format. And Nassim wanted that. He wants that experience because he wants that material to be absorbed like immediately. He wants these people to be completely and fully immersed in what he's trying to say. And I think, good theater, good film can really do that. It's hard though. It's hard to do that in any setting, even in, big, well-funded, feature films, all the way down to community theater. But it's 10 times harder to do it in community theater because you're working on a budget.
yeah,
People are working, trying to do this after work or school. There can be a talent issue. Some people just might not be able to bring forward what is meant to be brought forward. And so for an audience member, it's difficult, to go to see like a great play, something that has so much meaning and purpose and power and like influence on culture and like an individual's life. To be a part of that from a community theater sense, you have to, it's hard to do that justice. With a show like this, it's like you could have a group of friends over at your house and say, "We're going to read this. And I've never seen this before. I'm going to perform this for you," and that's it's going to bring you right in. It's almost like reading poetry. If you're like, if I don't know if you like poetry at all, but if you're among friends and you guys are just maybe swapping poems that you really like, it's kind of the same thing. It's that same emotional grasp that you get. It's something that you can't stop from happening. It just happens. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about it is no matter what happens, you're on that ride. It's going down,
right,
and you're right there with it, and it's going to affect you in one way or another, and that's what Nassim wants.
Can you imagine writing that, creating that play? I mean,
I can't. Yeah, I can't at all. His circumstances leading up to it. I mean, he's had he's had a really amazing life. I read about him after the show, and yeah, he's had a lot of struggle, and I think a lot of great work comes from that, and he has created a great piece. It's not without its flaws, like anything else in the world, but the message is still there, the experience is still there, and like I said, I think beyond most other things that you could see from a community theater standpoint, this is like, no matter where you see it.
Yeah.
If you were to watch this on Broadway, if you were to watch this at a local theater near you, it's the same. I would argue it's the same experience. I can't imagine it being, any different. I'd say it honestly would be worse if you got some very theatrical, very ego-driven person to walk on stage who's not, doesn't have that fear or anxiety going into it, and then just tries to, emote the whole time and doesn't really, think too much. And having somebody who has a little bit of nerves going in and is being a human, is going to do a much better job at the show than I think other people could.
My goodness. Yeah. Anything else you want to touch on?
I don't know. Yeah, it was just a really wonderful experience. I'm really thankful that I was a part of it. I'm thankful that Waylon saw whatever he saw in me and rolled that dice. Yeah, I'm just really fortunate I feel very fortunate to have been a part of it. And thank you for your interest in the show, and
oh, you're welcome.
For all these questions. This has been a wonderful conversation.
You're welcome.
Great to kind of dive into something I haven't really gotten to talk about very much.
Yeah, I know. And the dance around the thing that we can't talk about. So I want to let you know that Waylon must have been very impressed with your performance, because when I was looking for actors to talk to, yours was at the top of the list. It was one of the first names he gave me. So you obviously made some type of an impression upon him. So, and it lasted.
It means a lot. It means a lot. So yeah, like I said, he's been, he's just such a wonderful person. I consider him to be a close friend now. He's taught me a lot. And, just from giving me this experience, he gave me something that, I couldn't have gotten anywhere else. So
dude, I know you're in one of the, now you're in that 1% of people. I mean, how many people do it? Right?
Right. Yeah. No, probably not too many. I do, like I said, though, I do wish more people would. Yeah. If you get the opportunity, I know it's like, you would think it's crazy, but I can't stress it enough. Like it's good to have humans there. It's good to have humans there. Like if you can let go of your, which is hard for all of us, people who like to spend time on stage. If you can let go of that feeling of like wanting to do something and to just do, it's just, man, I can't give it enough.
I can tell
enough of a praise. And I just want more people to experience it. Actors, audience members. Yeah, it's an important piece of work, I think.
Good. That's a good place to end. All right, buddy.